Iran's strikes on targets in the neighbouring Gulf states continue to bring condemnation. But Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told his Qatari counterpart Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani that Iranian missile attacks were directed at US interests, not at Qatar. Qatar is rejecting that claim and calling for an immediate halt to hostilities. Let's bring in our correspondent in Doha, Hoda Abdelhamid, for more on this situation. Hoda, good evening to you. Tell us the latest on these strikes around where you are.
Well, certainly, I would say that it feels that there are less strikes over the last 24 hours. Here in Qatar, the government said that it had intercepted at dawn 10 drones and 2 ballistic missiles. But since we haven't heard any explosions, and I would say that people sort of still quite worried, but feel a little bit more relaxed, even though everything is still possible. And also, if you look at the wider region, yes, there have been some attacks. There was one projectile that landed at the Ras Tanura oil facility in Saudi Arabia. There was an attack on a logistic building that belongs to the U.S. Embassy near the Baghdad airport. There was also an attack in Erbil, but it is not in the intensity over the past that we have seen and experienced over the past 4 days, I would say, today being the 5th day of the war. Now, certainly, if we listen to what came out of the White House over the past hour, the White House says that the U.S. will have full control over the skies of Iran within the coming hours. That doesn't mean that the attacks would stop completely, but certainly it makes it more difficult, really, for Iran to continue at the intensity we have seen. But Iran's strategy is a strategy of a war of attrition. We have seen that being adapted, for example, in Ukraine, with the launched by Russia, but with the Iranian Shahed drones. The tactic would being to overwhelm really the defense systems by sending the swarm of drones and hoping that a few would slip in and reach their targets. Iran usually likes to have a long-term game, so it will continue as much as possible to try to target what it says are U.S. assets in the region. But as the Qatari Prime Minister said, he refutes that explanation because it's Qatari assets that have been attacked. It's Emirati assets that have been attacked. So Iran knows also that by doing that, it is imposing a financial cost on all of these countries, and that financial cost will have a ripple effect on Western powers, on China, for example, that needs the oil, the gas rather, from Qatar, and is actually reportedly putting pressure on Iran to stop the attacks on Qatar, simply because the Ras Laffan gas facility has been shut down 24 hours ago. Qatar has announced today that it's using its force majeure clause of its contracts, which basically means that it frees the Qatar Energy Company from all its contractual obligations. So certainly this is a situation that everyone except Iran would like to see stop as quick as possible.
Clear illustration from Yehuda of how this is having a real knock-on effect across the region and beyond, as you point out. I'm wondering about the fact that we do not know at this stage how long this is going to go on for. And we can understand, I think, that Iran will be willing to strike back and strike out for as long as it possibly can. And I'm wondering how the Gulf states will react to that, because I suspect there might be a limit to the missile interceptor systems that they need to fend off what is being fired at them. Can you give us any kind of insight into how the Gulf is equipped for that?
Well, the official message coming out from all these governments is that they have enough interceptors to protect themselves in the long run. And if you look at the success rate of these interceptions since the beginning of this war in the UAE, it's, according to some analysts, it's about 92%. Here in Qatar, it's about 96%. So certainly a very high a very high success rate. Now, the big question, as you say, is how long can they sustain that? We don't know exactly how much they have, and they would probably not want to reveal those figures. The US is under immense pressure to continue producing as much interceptors as it can, whether it is the Patriot systems or the THAAD systems or the ballistic systems. And so the pressure is there on the US. What I think the fear for the Gulf countries is that the first client of the US would be Israel rather than their GCC. Now, we also know that they have, over the past decade or so, diversified their sources. Saudi Arabia, for example, has a large number of Chinese-made interceptors. Qatar has some from China, also some from France, and some from South Korea. The same goes for the rest of the GCC countries. But the bulk of it still comes from the US. Now, if indeed the skies of Iran will be under the US control, or then things would be easier and they would be able to plan much better for the long term. But at the moment, in the short term and in the middle term, I think they will be fine. The big question is how long will this war last, and how much that capability will remain in the hands of the Iranians.
Hoda, thank you so much for your analysis. Greatly appreciated. Hoda Abdelhamid, our correspondent there in Doha. Thank you, and stay safe. We take a short